This is BBC Two. Tonight, The Late Show launches its celebration of BBC Two's 25th birthday with a look at early programmes about acting, presented by Simon Callow.
My lord, I have news to tell you. The actors are come hither, my lord.
He that plays the king shall be welcome.
The best actors in the world, either for tragedy, comedy, history, pastoral, pastoral comical, historical pastoral, tragical historical, tragical comical historical pastoral. Seneca cannot be too heavy, nor Plautus too light, for these are the only men.
BBC Two was born 25 years ago this week. Before that, music and arts on television had largely been the province of the cultural magazine programme Monitor, and there had been occasional one-off documentaries on famous artists and writers and musicians. The second channel brought a whole new approach, a batch of specialised series that came onto the screen mostly within the first year. This week, on The Late Show, we'll be digging into the archives of some of these series. I'm starting the week off with a selection from two remarkable series on acting. The first, awesomely entitled Great Acting, was transmitted in August 1965. It was produced by Hal Burton, a TV man passionate about the theatre. I remember being glued to the set week after week as Olivier, Richardson, Gielgud, Redgrave, Sybil Thorndike, Edith Evans, even then 25 years ago, legendary figures, talked, sometimes with surprising candour, about their craft, their careers, and themselves. Great Acting, with its impressive array of knights and dames, what in China would be called living national treasures, was followed by Acting in the 60s, where their presumed successors, Albert Finney, Richard Burton, and Vanessa Redgrave, had their say. So we've ranged pretty widely in this selection. Among the bemusing assortment of interviewers, you will recognize perhaps Kenneth Tynan and Derek Hart. Many actors of the older generation were very shy of talking about acting, often claiming it was something that couldn't be described. But in these interviews, perhaps for the first time publicly, they made tremendous efforts to do just that. This is Sir Ralph Richardson from 1965.
I went to the Theatre Royal at Brighton, and I saw Benson, Sir Frank Benson, playing Hamlet. And I knew the play very well. And the ghost, I always remember the ghost appeared. And he said to Benson, "Remember me." And Benson took his sword and he scratched it on the stage. He scratched it on the stage. This terrible noise and the sword moving across the stage with a wonderful, weird effect. "Remember thee." He said, it sounded like vengeance. It sounded like hell where the ghost came from. It was absolutely mesmerizing. My God, I thought if I could do that. That's the job for me. Sheer magic. Oh, my goodness, I thought if I could touch something like that. And so my heart was really beating quite wildly. I thought, if only I could be an actor. If only I could have a sword and scratch it on the floor. I would never want to do anything else.
Sybil, that means a lot to you, doesn't it? The piano.
Yes.
It's always seemed to be so extraordinary that your first idea about an artist was that you were going to be a pianist, not an actress.
That I was going to be a pianist, yes. I often wonder what it was that stopped me being a pianist. It was nerves, really. And it affected my wrist. And that stopped it. I would rather have been a pianist than anything I can think of in this world.
And the headmaster finally suggested I went to RADA. And I said, what is that? You know, I didn't, and he said, it's the RADA, it's the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. And I said, oh, would you like to go there? It's in London, and you'll be there 2 years, and you're trained to be an actor. And so I went home and said the headmaster suggested I go to RADA. And my mother had just read Equity's annual letter to the newspapers saying what percentage of their members are out of work, and said it doesn't seem very substantial. Do you think father, who's a bookmaker and therefore a bit of a gambler, said, well, no, let him go, and if he doesn't like it, he can always come back into the business. And mother, preferring for me to be an actor than a bookmaker, said, oh, he can go.
It is true that. I always used it as an escape, I think. I'm a terrible escapist in life. And to go to a theatre and shut myself up in a dressing room and come out as somebody else and live a mimic life does give me pleasure, and I suppose always has done. I remember, I suppose all children dress up and play games, but my brothers and sister and I were tremendously theatrically minded in that way in our nursery days and in our school days even. I was always living in some sort of fantasy world.
My guiding light in the theatre, read to the theatre, was the Daily Mirror, because it came out and said that in an attractive, talented and handsome boy wanted. And so Mother and I had a brisk conference, and we decided I was talented, handsome, moot point, but we'd better have a try. And so I went and gave an audition to a lady called Miss Lilla Field. Then I sang a song called Liza Ann from the Orchid, and there was no piano. And so Mother la-la'd the chorus for me to do the dance. You see, I had to do the dance. I got the job.
And you'd rehearsed that with her at home?
You bet I had, yes. The furniture pushed back.
The 60s was a golden time for actors, provided you were working, that is. The English stage company at the Royal Court had just entered its second phase under Bill Gaskell. The centuries-old dream of a national theatre had just become reality under Sir Laurence Olivier at the Old Vic. And the Royal Shakespeare Company, in addition to its Shakespearean repertoire at Stratford, was playing modern plays at the Aldwych. And on all these stages, younger actors, whose main experience had been perhaps kitchen sink drama, could find themselves acting with fellow artists who'd worked with Granville Barker, Bernard Shaw, or Gordon Craig. Dame Edith Evans had acted with Ellen Terry in the early 20s. Here she's filmed talking to students at the Central School of Drama.
You must govern the audience, must never let the audience run away with the play. Don't be delighted when they scream at you and think it's awful, but be upset, because they've no business to scream. They should laugh, but only if you want them to scream. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. And when they start getting out of hand, then you must cozy them down.
Can you sense immediately you go on?
Immediately. I always listen at the side before I go on for quite a little while to know what they're up to. Do you see what I mean? And you know by the way the lines are going whether they want a little gingering up or they want calming down. Don't you know when I was young, I don't know if your mother said it to you, yes, you'll be crying tonight, you're so lively this morning. But that's what the audiences are. If they start laughing like mad at the beginning, they won't have any strength left to laugh at the end, you see.
Your performance differs quite a lot each night.
Well, of course it does. That's why you've got to be strong if you're going to be actors.
Yes.
You must be very strong. You must have a lot of breath, a lot of physical strength, because you've got to manage a lot of human beings, you see. They've got to be held and brought up, set down, every sort of thing. And you've got to do it. Yes. So you're being tired. And don't come up saying, they're awfully good tonight, aren't they? I got my lesson years ago over that. I was many years ago in a play with two very good, well-known actors, and I was doing what all the other actors did. I was very young, and I said something about they weren't very good tonight, and the actor said to me, I wonder, have you ever thought how we are? I never needed to be told twice. They're not so very good tonight. Have a look at yourself. Perhaps you're not doing. After they paid to see you, you haven't paid to see them, you see.
The actor feels very, very swiftly, almost the moment he steps on the stage, the temper of the audience. And of course, it is his business to control this temper. You're driving a horse, as it were. You're going through in great detail the exact movements which have been decided on. You're going through the ballet part of it, as it were. And then you're also listening to the audience, as I say, keeping, if you can, very great control on them. And then you're also slightly creating the part in so far that you're refining, consciously refining the movements and perhaps inventing tiny other experiments in new ones. And then at the same time, you are really living in one part of your mind what is happening. Acting is to some extent a controlled dream. In one part of your consciousness, it really and truly is happening. But because to make it true to the audience all the time, the actor must at any rate some of the time believe himself that it is really true. But this, in my experience at any rate, this absolute reality, this layer of absolute reality, is a comparatively small one. The rest of it is technique, as I say, of being very careful that the thing is completely accurate, completely clear, completely as laid down, completely as shaped beforehand. What you're reshaping, because in every performance you're trying to find a better way to do it. These experiments were very, very small indeed, and quite unnoticed indeed by your fellow actors, but they're working all the time. But 3 or 4 layers of consciousness are necessary, or work during the time of playing.
I think the best description of how that is controlled is the one by Joseph Jefferson, the American actor of many years ago, who said that when he was asked his opinion about what is called the Coquelin controversy, Coquelin believing that an actor shouldn't feel anything at all, and Irving believing that the actor should, in fact, be feeling the very things he's talking about. Joseph Jefferson said, as for me, very meekly, as for me, I find that I act best when my heart is warm and my head is cool. It's only a metaphor, but it's as near as anybody can get to state of mind and being that you are in when you want to control something that could easily become excessive.
On the evenings in which, as you've said yourself in your books, when you feel those evenings, and they're not every evening you're doing a part, obviously, so every now and again the god descends, you yourself as an actor feel the magic is working.
Yes.
Now, on those evenings, how far do you feel you're in control? Is it something that takes over, or are you still in control? On the really big evenings of your life?
It feels as if somebody has taken over, but in fact, I think it is that you have complete control. But I've only played one neurotic murderer, and that was Uncle Harry, for as long as a year. And at the end of the year, I had to leave the play. It was getting me down.
Or the actual personal pressure of the part?
Yes, not only the effort of doing it night after night, but the strain that such emotions put on you. In simulating hysteria, you're bound to experience it a little, I think.
And I didn't know how to select what I wanted to do or really put over emotion. I just indulged in my own emotions and imagined that was acting. And I only learnt long afterwards that you can't indulge, although you may indulge your emotions in imagining a part, you mustn't allow them free rein until you have selected exactly what you want to show the audience and how much you must show it while you're doing it.
Is this something that you learned perhaps with Harcourt Williams at the Vic?
I don't think I learned it till a very few years ago, really. I know Komisarjevsky used to tell me to relax, relax, and I thought relaxing was something that you had nothing to do with the stage. When I was on the stage, I felt it was my duty to do something and give something and be something. And through imagination, intense imagination, and tremendous emotional desire, I did create a certain effect, but it was always very tense. And I think people found me very artificial and very overstrung. It was, of course, very helpful in parts, like Richard II and Hamlet, to have this emotional tension, but I exhausted myself most terribly. I used to be absolutely whacked, playing these very big classical parts and trying to live every moment of them. I couldn't find any places. It didn't occur to me that there are places where you really must do nothing. But it was very fascinating to me last year, rehearsing Richard Burton in Hamlet in New York, which I directed, because I said to him, well, this is going to be your Hamlet, you know. I'm not going to try and give you mine, but perhaps I can help you a bit with the technical side of it. And he said after the first week or two, he said, the thing which is so marvelous that I've got from you is you tell me when to save myself. I'm not exhausted at the end of this scene or that scene, which used to kill me when I played the part of the vic. And I said, well, that's all I've learned over all these years.
I find directors, as we all know, the old cliche that the French theatre is a writer's theatre and the British theatre is an actor's theatre and the American theatre is a director's theatre. I don't believe any of them. The theatre is essentially a writer's theatre, and directors are relatively unimportant. They're not more than jumped-up stage managers. Films, it's a different matter. No, a director should tell you vaguely, roughly, the place on the stage where you will be best seen, and then, assumedly, leave the rest to you. John Gielgud, who was the best director I've ever worked with on the stage, certainly, was marvelously instructive about Hamlet, but certainly didn't dominate in the sense in the sense of saying, you must do this, or you must do that, or you must go there, you must do, because there were certain stern rules that I had for myself. A, don't come near me. You leave me alone. Which he understood. And I think he thinks that I'm a very undisciplined actor. For that very reason, I have to have a lot of space on the stage, a lot of space that I can move without being bothered by too many people. Well, John says I'm very undisciplined. He's probably right. But then I wouldn't want to be disciplined. I wouldn't want to be that kind of actor who goes on the stage and perfectly every night gives the same cadence to the same speech every night for days and days and days and days on end. I would prefer to be free so that I'm invited to be bad some nights, if I happen to be bad that night.
I once described Gielgud in print as the greatest living actor from the neck up, by which I meant that his most powerful attributes were his face and his voice. And I've often thought, do you think the same could be said of you?
No, I think it's not from the neck up, but from the brain down from here to here. I think that most of my capacity lies in my voice.
There was a speech in Boy with a Card that you had a particular impact with. It started, I was alone by the unattended pillow. Would you like to do that for us now?
As you know, this is about this strange little saint, Cuthman, who was trying to build a church. The villagers and everybody who helps him, they can't put up the king post, the key post in the church. And he's left alone on the stage, and the other people go off, having despaired of building this church. They come back, and it's in place. I was alone by the unattended pillar, mourning the bereaved air that lay so quiet between walls, hungry for hammer blows and the momentous hive that once was there. But gradually, I was aware of someone in the doorway, and turned my eyes that way and saw, carved out of the sunlight, a man who stood watching me, so still that there was not other such stillness anywhere on the earth, so still that the air seemed to leap at his side. He came towards me, and the sun flooded its banks and flowed across the shadow. He asked me why I stood alone. His voice hovered on memory with open wings and drew itself up from a chine of silence
as though it had long time lain in a vein of gold. I told him, it is the king post. He stretched his hand upon it. At his touch, it lifted into place. There was no sound. I cried out. I cried at last, "Who are you?" I heard him say, "I was a carpenter."
Today, in spite of film and television, the theatre is still the actor's training ground, and every actor knows for his acting health, it's a place he has to return to. Whether we still measure ourselves against the great performers of the past is another matter. For Olivier and Richardson's generation, tradition, the tradition of Garrick, Keane, and Irving, was something that had to be encountered and transformed. They had, at the Old Vic, the opportunity to cut their teeth on a whole succession of classical roles which taught them their strengths and weaknesses, both as actors and as people. Dame Sybil Thorndike was a young actress during the First World War when she was invited to visit the Old Vic by its formidable director, Lillian Bayliss.
And then I went down to meet Miss Bayliss, and of course I was bowled over with her. She was wonderful. She was like nothing on earth. I'd seen a pretty good oddity in Miss Horniman, but there was nothing to Lil. But oh, it was wonderful work then. Of course, one had all the big, lovely parts. But then, being war, gradually the men were filtered out. And Ben Greet said to me, "Do you want to play boys' parts?" And I said, "Yes, anything." And so I had Prince Hal, I had Ferdinand, I had Lancelot Gobbo. Oh, a whole lot of them.
Yes, and it was at the Old Vic that you first played some of the more mature, great tragic parts, like Lady Macbeth.
You see, I'd never played Lady Macbeth, and B.G. wanted me to do it. And I was reading it through, and you know, I remembered about Mrs. Siddons, that she read it through, and she came to her husband and she said, "I can't play this. This is so awful." And I felt the same thing. You know, I played about with it in amateurs with Russell and all, but this was the first time I'd seen it maturely, and I thought, this is so awful. I haven't got anything in me like that woman. And Lillian Bayliss, I said to her, "I don't think I can play it. I don't know the beginnings of this foulness." She said, "Don't be so nonsensical. You love your husband, don't you?" I said, "Yes." "Well," she said, "she loves him. Or she was only doing it for him, so there you are." And that started me right. And I thought of it through him and through doing things for the children and being willing to do any awful thing, so long as they were all right. Oh, she was extraordinary in that way. I don't really believe she ever saw one play through. I don't believe she ever did.
Really?
No.
She used to sneak out of that box, did
Yes,
she?
sit up in that box, see little bits and run away again, and then cook the steak at the side of the stage, which she
Yes.
wanted to have between the shows. Always the last act of As You Like It was smell of steak and chops.
Perhaps in comedy I've done better in Shakespeare than in the heroic parts. I failed very badly as Othello. Gielgud wasn't too bad, but as Othello and Macbeth, they were disastrous.
Why do you think they were?
I don't know. I really can't think. There are parts that I would wish to play really more than any other. And in the bathroom, I'm rather good. But somehow or other, I don't know what it is. I found when I came to play Macbeth, is this a dagger that I see before me? I just damn well didn't see the dagger, and neither did anybody else. Perhaps I haven't this emotional imagination which is necessary for these parts, which I so desperately wish I had. It's the thing that attracts me more than anything, to be able to play Othello perfectly. I mean, I'd give half my life to be able to do it.
And I remember when I first worked with Laurence Olivier in Romeo and Juliet, and we alternated the parts of Mercutio and Romeo, and I was directing. And I bullied him a great deal about his verse speaking, which he admitted himself he wasn't happy about. I was rather showy about mine and fancied myself very much as a verse speaker, and I think became very mannered in consequence. But I was so jealous because when he played Romeo, he used tremendous energy, but he knew just how to cope with it, select it. And also when he did things which I tried to do in the same part. I remember Ralph Richardson, who I had made great friends with meanwhile, saying to me, but you see, when Larry leans against the balcony, the whole balcony scene is, the way he leans against the balcony, looks up, is the whole scene immediately, because he has this wonderful plastique, which is absolutely unself-conscious, like a live young panther or something. And I would been draping myself around the stage for weeks, thinking of myself very romantic as Romeo. I was rather baffled and dismayed to find I couldn't make the same effect at all.
I was fighting a cause when I was playing Romeo, because, understand, I've admired John Gielgud all my life, with complete devotion. I've never thought of myself as quite the same actor as he is. They've got the same sort of actor. I've always thought that we were the reverses of the same coin, perhaps. I've seen, as if you had a coin, I'd seen the top half, John, all spiritual, all spirituality, all beauty, all abstract things, and myself, all earth, blood, earth, everything to do with earth, humanity, if you like, the baser part of humanity. I suppose I must have sensed a sort of possible rivalry between us that might last all our lives. I don't know, but I suppose it made me go for the other. Whatever it was that he had might have done that. That might have happened that way. But when I was playing Romeo, I was carrying a torch. I was trying to sell realism in Shakespeare. I believed in it with my whole soul. And I believed that Johnny was not doing that enough. I thought that he was paying attention to the exclusion of the earth to all music, all lyricism. And I was for the other side of the coin.
You he that hangs the verses on the trees wherein Rosalind is so admired?
I swear to thee, youth, by the white hand of Rosalind, I am that he, that unfortunate he.
But are you so much in love as your rhymes speak?
Neither rhyme nor reason can express how much.
Love is merely a madness, and I tell you deserves as well a dark house and a whip as madmen do. Yet I profess curing it by counsel.
Have you ever cured any, sir?
Yes, one, in this manner. He was to imagine me his love, his mistress, and I set him every day to woo me. At which time would I, being but a moonish youth, grieve, be effeminate, changeable, longing and liking, proud, fantastical, apish, shallow, inconstant, full of tears, full of smiles, for every passion something, and for no passion truly anything, as boys and women are for the most part cattle of this colour, would now like him, now loathe him, now entertain him, then forswear him, now weep for him, then spit at him, that I drave my suitor from his mad humour of love into a living humour of madness, which was to forswear the full stream of the world and to live in a nook merely monastic. And thus I cured him. This way will I take upon me to wash your liver as clean as a sound sheep's heart, that there shall not be one spot of love in it.
I would not be cured, youth.
I would cure you, if you would but call me Rosalind, and come every day to my cote and woo me.
Vanessa, it seems to me, and indeed to the critics who stood and cheered you on the first night when you played Rosalind in As You Like It, that you were born to play that part. Did you feel that when you first knew that you were going to play it?
No, I certainly don't feel like it watching myself there at the moment. What was great about it was when I read the script for the first time, it was a script, it wasn't a book.
an old play.
You'd never seen the play before?
I had, and I hadn't ever particularly liked it before. I'd never seen any production that had made me love the play. I just knew that Rosalind would be a lovely part to play. But when I actually read it, I don't know why it is, maybe had read a lot of Elizabethan literature and poems, and it's always been a time which is very vivid, sensually, physically, visually for me. I feel as if I've lived in it to a certain extent, and in Elizabethan prose of them, some of those Elizabethan stories, short stories, for instance, I guess I've read so much that since most of As You Like It is written in prose, you know, it didn't seem removed from me in any way. Any strange antique turns of expression just seemed like a fun way of talking, like the kind of sort of way we talk now, mixing in all sorts of things which will sound like very antique, weird ways of speaking 200 years from now, but are just our free and easy way of talking.
There are some, of course. There was one in that speech, come to my coat.
One can think of coat as being like, come to my pad, you know. And that's the way I felt about it. I don't know that I did it like that, but...
I don't know what was wrong with my work at Stratford. I mean, it was more wrong then than it's ever been before or since. I mean, I was aware of it being wrong. It was one of those times when you kind of just feel that everything you do, you're in a kind of tunnel, and there's nothing you can do to get out of it. The more you try to get out of it, the more you're in it, you know. And my work was awful, just vile. And kind of every time I went on stage, I felt, get off, what are you doing? And terrible. And, but when I went on for St. Laurence in Coriolanus, all the sort of difficulties I seem to be going through just kind of left me because, well, first of all, you know, they kind of expect you to come on in flannels with a book, you know. St. Laurence isn't playing, big groan. His part would be played by Albert Finney. And then, you know, I came on and I had the costume on. So they immediately think I'm talented because I've actually got into the clothes, you know, and I've got the body makeup on. And then I start and I haven't got, they can't see the book. Oh, how's it do? And I actually got through it without drying, so they think I'm very good, you know. But when you actually go on, if you're an understudy and you go on, the card you've got, actually, in your hand, is that one that they think you might not be able to get through at all. And if you can get through with any degree of nous at all, they think you're very good, you know. And I kind of felt, oh, get in there. I mean, it's terrible to hear that announcement, you know, that St. Laurence won't be, if you're in your dressing room, putting on the makeup, St. Laurence won't be playing tonight. Yeah, terrible groan throughout the auditorium. That's nice. I don't think it was a good Coriolanus, you know. I mean, it was, and also when you hear Sir Lawrence's tones ringing in your ears for the number of times he'd done the performances, it's very difficult for you not to sort of be similar, you know, because you're working on his blueprint. What is interesting, what one did learn from that, is how a great actor can take the kind of peaks and the valleys of a performance, the ups and downs of a character as written, and push them even farther apart. Do you know what I mean? That he sort of makes the climaxes higher, and he makes the depths of it lower than you feel is possible in the text. And that was marvelous, to go through it.
What you need to make up your makeup as an actor is observation, intuition. You must, at its most highfalutin, the most highfalutin expression of it, the actor is as important as the illuminator of the human heart. He's as important as the psychiatrist or the doctor, minister, if you like. That's putting him very high and mightily. At the opposite end of that pole, you've got to find in the actor a man who will not be too proud to scavenge that tiniest little bit of human circumstance. Observe it, use it, find it, use it sometime or another. I've frequently observed things, and thank God I haven't got a very good memory for anything else, but I've got a memory for little details. And I've had things in my back of my mind for as long as 18 years before I've used them. And perhaps in those little tiny things, maybe the key to a whole characterization.
We're going to look now at a scene from the film of Richard III. It's the scene after Richard has successfully made love to the widow of one of his victims.
Was ever woman in this humour wooed? Was ever woman in this humour won? My dukedom to a widow's chastity I do mistake my person all this while. Upon my life she finds, although I cannot, myself to be a marvellous proper man. I'll be at charges for a looking-glass, and entertain some score or two of tailors to study fashions to adorn my body. Since I am crept in favour with myself, I will maintain it to some little cost. Shine out, fair sun, till I have bought a glass, that I may see my shadow as I pass.
Did you know at the time that that was going to be one of the key performances of your career?
No. No. A lot of things contributed to it. I said, talking about scavenging just now. One thing that may lead an actor to be successful in a part, may, not always, but may, is to try to be unlike somebody else in it. At the time when I took over that part, first of all, Donald Wolford had made an enormous success in the part, only 18 months previously. And I didn't want to play the part at all, because I thought it was much too close to this colleague's success. And I had seen it. And when I was learning it, I could hear nothing but Donald's voice in my mind's ear, and see nothing but him in my mind's eye. And so I thought, this won't do. I've just got to think of something else. Well, my first thought, I'd always had images, pictures. I'd heard imitations of old actors imitating Henry Irving. And so I did right away an imitation of these old actors imitating Henry Irving's voice. That's why I took that rather sort of narrow kind of vocal address. Then I thought about looks. And I thought about the big bad wolf. And I thought about a director under whom I had suffered an extremis in New York called Jed Harris. The physiognomy of the big bad wolf was said to have been founded upon Jed Harris. And so, hence the nose, which originally was very much bigger than it was finally in the film. And so with one or two extraneous externals, I began to build up a character, a characterization. I'm afraid I do work mostly from the outside in. I usually collect, whether consciously or unconsciously, I usually collect a lot of details, a lot of characteristics, and find a creature swimming about somehow in the middle of them.
Master Builder Sooners, you even sign your name like that.
Yes.
I've always wondered, why do you not call yourself an architect?
I never have.
Well, all the others do, and they're your inferiors.
Perhaps it is because I never took the degrees and had to teach myself. Master Builder seemed good enough to me.
Master Builder, yes, I like the sound of it, too. This isn't your writing.
No, that's my secretary.
Male or female?
Female.
Married?
No, single.
Single?
But soon to be married.
Oh, how nice for her.
Yes, but hardly for me. I shall have lost a very good secretary.
Can you not acquire another one just as good?
Would you care to apply for the post?
No, I should not. There must be other things to do in life besides entering lists in ledgers. What do you think?
Such as a few little things to purchase in the town tomorrow. Pretty things to wear.
No, all that can wait. Besides, I haven't any money.
Ah, no money and no luggage either.
Not a thing in the world. What is more, I don't care. I'm here and I don't care.
I like you for that.
Only for that?
No. Not only for that.
Did you find Ibsen difficult or easy to play?
I found it very... I mean, we did 2 productions, actually. The first time I played it was with Sir Michael Redgrave. And I don't know, really... Something went very wrong. I've tried very hard to analyse what it... I think I played it rather frenziedly, you know, much... This is what an awful lot of the notices said. And the second time round, I found it much simpler. You know, I sort of calmed down and held on to certain things which were, I found very important about Hilda Wangel, you know. I think what I did too much in the first one was sort of work on the mysterious and strange thing of it, which in actual fact it isn't.
Did you perhaps get bothered by Ibsen's layers of meaning in this?
Well, I don't think that was so much the problem with The Master Builders is there are 3 acts, and it's rarely a duologue. In actual fact, one found that in Ibsen, and in that play in particular, one was saying very much the same thing. It was one of those things of trying to vary it and colour it as much as possible. I don't think I did that the first time either.
Hilda's often referred to as a kind of bird of prey. Did you find this difficult to play? Because it mustn't be apparent too soon that she's luring Solness to his death.
I don't think she's aware of it at all. I mean, I found very much with Hilda that it's something in it, something very much that happens to you when you've just left school, that you can make anything happen, that if you will it enough, it will. But you know what I mean? If you sort of go on long enough saying it must happen, it will happen, it will, which is in actual fact a line of Hilda's.
You climbed, and you climbed, and you climbed with slung over your arm a great wreath of leaves. You climbed, and you climbed, and you climbed, and when you reached the weather vane right at the top of the spire, slowly you hung the wreath on the topmost tip. Suppose, I thought, standing down there, suppose you were to fall.
Well, I might have done, as a matter of fact, for one of those little devils in white. It all comes back to me now. Had the impertinence to shriek up at the top of her voice.
Oh, no, what? What did she shriek?
Oh,
the little
just,
devil.
Master Builder, Master Builder, Master Builder, over and over again. It was pretty disconcerting, I can tell you.
Yes, I was the little devil.
Is there any great playwright whose work has never tempted you at all?
Brecht.
Why not Brecht?
Loathsome, vulgar, petty, little, nothing.
Large, poetic, universal, everything.
That's what you say.
Burton's sparring partner was, of course, Kenneth Tynan. Not one of the famous and great actors that spoke on these programs was a stranger to disaster. For every triumph, there was a humiliation. We'll give the last couple of words to Noel Coward on how to flop gracefully, and to Lord Olivier on the sweet smell of success. But Richard Burton's answer was to go out there fists flying.
Quite clearly, I do feel that on the stage, it's virtually every man for himself. I don't think anybody wants to help you particularly, even despite the agonies of a first night and the nervousness and so on. You really have to look after yourself. And I think that particular loneliness, solitude, the idea of carrying on your own private room is not particularly unique to actors, that they all have it. I have it perhaps, or sometimes have it, a little more than most. When I go out there on the stage, I'm battling the world. I have to beat the world. I have to be the best as far as I can make it.
You have had your failures, really, haven't you?
Oh, yes. Booed off the stage. Utmost enthusiasm. Home
How do you
chat
face
and Sirocco.
Really?
Sirocco was splendid because that was a real rouser. It wasn't very good to start with. And the gallery was out to make trouble, which they succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. And at the end, they were booing and screaming. My mother, who was slightly deaf, thought they were cheering, and I had to explain, no dear. I then went whizzing through the pass door, and Basil Dean also Basil Dean never had the courage to go to his opening night, so he'd been away somewhere having dinner. And he heard all this noise going on, thought it was tremendous, so he was ringing the curtain up and down. So I said, listen, Basil, it's terrible. It's an absolute shambles. Let me on. Because I thought, well, then we can get a focal point for the booing. And I knew I was the one they were after. So I went on and didn't look at the audience at all. I turned my behind to them and shook hands with Ivor and kissed Bunny Doble, and then turned and did the most irritating thing in the world. And stood, practically, happily crucified, and refused to let the curtain come down. I thought, I wonder how long they can go on without their larynxes going. And they booed, and they booed, and they booed, and sure enough, it finally died away because they got tired. Then, unfortunately, somebody shouted for Frances Doble, and she stepped forward and said, this is the happiest evening of my life. So then I broke up, and that was more booing. It was lovely.
I read a few notices next morning, stayed up till 3, of course, drank a little bit too much. And my next performance was the next day matinee, to which I was all too ill prepared. And there was something in the atmosphere. There was something, people talk, there is a phrase, the sweet smell of success. And I can only tell you, I've had 2 experiences of that, and it just smells like Brighton and oyster bars and things like that. As I walked onto the stage, I felt this thing. I felt for the first time that the critics had approved, that the public had approved, and they'd created a kind of grapevine, and that particular audience had felt impelled to come to see me. And it was an overwhelming feeling, a head-reeling feeling. And it went straight to my head. And I felt a feeling I'd never felt before, this complete confidence. I felt, if you like, which is necessary for an actor to feel finally, I felt a little power of hypnotism. I felt that I had them. And it went to my head, as I said, to such an extent that I didn't even bother to put on the limp. I thought, I've got them anyway.